Be advised, the opinions and views of the hosts and guests do not reflect those of the station.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome once again to For the Public Good. I'm Larry Bruhart, and we're the show that tries to identify corporations, institutions, and individuals who are doing good and doing it well. And tonight, guys, I'm here again with a couple of old friends. Well, one's old and the other's not so old. But, Sarah Sugitan.
Hi, Larry.
Sarah,
Good
hi,
evening.
and Harry.
Hi, Larry.
And Harry, you all know Harry from Talk to Harry, but he's also the president of Super Brands. And we're going to talk tonight about super branding, you know, and you're maybe wondering, well, what does that have to do with CSR? Branding is one thing. Super branding, you're not into super branding unless you're into CSR and a sustainable CSR. And so, Harry, why don't you just jump it up from there, tell us something about super branding.
A quick introduction to Super Brands is, Super Brands is an award-giving body. We are in 88 countries worldwide. We are known to be the global brand arbiter. In the Philippines, we've been here 18, turning 19 years. We have branded close to a little over 200 brands in the Philippines alone. And worldwide, we have branded close to 14,500 brands. Now, when you say super brands and you become a super brand, it is not a contest. It is not good, better, best. Super Brands is a program wherein brands co-brand with us as well as amongst each other. The criteria, of course, the basic criteria is a minimum operation of 3 to 5 years, leader in its field based on market hold, and the ability to deliver the brand promise. Now let me put this together, because branding, for some reason, does not come very easy to most marketers. There's a difference between a marketing concept or a marketing man and a brand manager. Branding is the ability to deliver the brand promise with consistency. If you can deliver whatever it is that you promise and you do this with consistency, you earn what you call an integrity. If you have integrity, that's the brand.
Okay, now it's interesting you bring all this up, and we have Attorney Sarah on the show with us tonight too. And one of the things a lot of people think, and maybe I always thought it too when I first started my own company, and the idea is, well, you know, I started a company, I got a company mark, so I guess I have a brand.
Yes.
and here I'm doing business, right?
No.
And that isn't what branding
No,
is.
that's not
That's
branding.
not what branding is.
Branding.
That's just
That
a matter
is-
of making a company, right?
No, it's just a
Just
title.
naming your
A title.
company.
Yes,
yeah,
it's
naming the
naming.
company. And that's where you come in on the legal side of it. You know, you maybe I register my trademark or I register some of the other things, but that's not branding, is it?
No, it's
It isn't
not at all.
branding.
It has nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
That is, okay, we are all branded when we get born because of the purpose of identification. It's called the birth certificate. And we are branded with titles. We are given titles. That's our name. And proof of that name and that title is your birth certificate that says your name on it. Now, how do you brand? Throughout life, depending on who you make yourself out to be, that's how you brand throughout life, to be the brand. For example, my name's Harry, and I brand myself as Harry throughout my life, going through my experiences and how my experiences are with other people. I am now branding myself with them. But when you talk of super branding as in products and services, it is the ability to deliver, or you have to generate integrity. If you don't have integrity, you cannot brand. You don't even begin. You see, integrity is the game of branding. For example, if you have a product and it's really a bad product, and you say that this product, every time you hold it, maneuver it, or swallow it, or absorb it, it's supposed to turn you white. Let's suppose that's the product. It's supposed to make you white, because whitening in this country is very popular. If the product turns you black or purple or pink and not white, you're not delivering your promise. It's like saying, my car, Toyota, is made of good, high quality. But then the person who owns the Toyota, the car keeps breaking down. The delivery of the promise is not consistent.
Right. And by the way, that doesn't happen with Toyota cars. I suppose.
It can actually.
No,
It's
no.
called lemons.
Yeah, lemons. No, actually, I understand that. And that's the thing that I think escapes a lot of people, you know. And when we start talking about being sustainable, and that's that point that you were making, is to be sustainable,
Yes.
you've got to be delivering all the time.
Yeah. Well,
And-
the sustainability part, you're right. And that's where the corporate social responsibility comes
Right,
in.
exactly.
And most people see that in the wrong light. They think it's charity.
Absolutely, and that's
Yeah.
a point that I really wanted to put out. This is one of the things that you focus on
Yes.
at Super Brands, right? Is that you not only get a super brand, or you don't bring in people in and you award them a super brand. One of the one criterion for that is that they're doing something sustainable in CSR, right? And that is not just going out, planting a tree, getting a photo shoot, drinking some beer, and going home,
That's
right?
right.
That's not what sustainable CSR is all about.
That's
And
right.
it's not charitable because if you do it right, you're creating new customers for your company,
Correct.
right? And that's the big thing that people really don't
And new talent.
get into it. Yeah, new
Sustaining talent.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, sustaining talent. The one thing about branding, the process as you brand and as you go into super branding, as we call it. First, there's registration and protection of the title. Like in this case, your birth certificate. That's your title. For brands, we have intellectual property sensitivities. It's called the actual registration of trade names, trademarks. And then it's followed through with copyrights, correct, attorney? Parang ganun yan eh.
Yes, well, that's the government side of it. What I'd really like to discuss is there social responsibility among a profession? For example, do lawyers have to perform social responsibility in their profession? Do doctors have to have social responsibility in their profession? Because in the practice among lawyers, well, sometimes we get appointed counsel de officio. If it's a criminal case and then just for that hearing, the accused appears without a counsel, then the court can appoint you as a counsel de officio. Now, is that social responsibility? And I would say yes.
It is. Pro
Yes.
bono?
Yes,
Sure.
and also when it comes to accepting clients, I have my own law office now. I just established it this year. And one thing that I've realized as a lawyer is you will always be on demand. People will always have a legal problem or a legal issue or a legal question, not necessarily pertaining to them, but to the world in general or even to their neighbors, etc., so on and so forth. They will always ask you legal question. You will always be approaching, what do you think about this? What do you think? And you can't necessarily charge for that. I think in the States, the practice is different. Once you start asking questions, the clock starts ticking and then they bill you by the hour. But here, we can't do that. See, the culture does not enable you to charge every time you open your mouth or you think for somebody else.
In the U.S., it's not quite that easy either. But
Okay,
there
it's good
is
to
that
hear.
point of people will take advantage. Like if they're out on the golf course with,
They'll ask
with
a
a
question.
doctor, with a doctor and say, "Hey, doc, I got this thing," you know, and they'll be looking for some kind of treatment at the time. And as a professional myself, I've always been careful throughout my life not to do that. I try not to ask somebody a professional question if
You're
it's
very
something that they
careful.
should be getting money for, you know, because it's not the right thing to do, really.
It's unethical.
It is unethical, yeah. But here, yeah, I know things are much more amorphous here, and so that's a good question. In fact, how do I ask you
Whether we
when
have-
somebody does ask you legal advice when you're not on the golf course, but you know, whenever? What do you do? What do you do? How do you handle it? That's a good question
Yes,
for Sarah.
yes, that's a good question. I was thinking about that. You see, with corporations now, I guess you have to have social responsibility. In the last 10 years, it's a term, or maybe even earlier, it's a term that has sprouted.
But it's
and
sort of misused. In a lot of
yes,
places,
yes,
but
a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
corporations have latched
Right,
onto it.
right.
But among individuals, I mean, professions, for example, we cannot be a corporation. I mean, the practice of law is limited to individuals or partnerships in the country. Do we need to have social responsibility? My answer would have to be yes. Every time somebody needs you or wants to ask a question of you, regardless of whether they will pay or not, you are obliged to answer that question. Why? Number one, we believe in karma. In this profession, it's very strong. Actually, when I was taking the bar, when I was in law school rather, every year, the Ateneo made it a point that all students should volunteer for the bar operations. Meaning those who are taking the bar get pampered, you become the runner during the bar exams for their lunch.
I see. Okay,
you know,
okay.
those things, and you help organize whatever logistics that is required, transporting the bar examinees to the location, etc. Things like this. So students are encouraged to volunteer in exchange for good karma 4 years later when you take the bar. So it's supposed to be a payback for whatever good thing that you do.
That's CSR.
Yes, it's
Well,
CSR.
that's right. And
It's
plus, doing that, you're understanding how the system works though as well,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Which is you get something from it as well.
yes,
right,
you
by
learn
doing
from
that.
it
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah.
And I always thought karma sounds like a currency in the profession when I was starting law school. It sounds like currency. Like I have to pay my dues in order to be wherever I want to be. And as a matter of fact, it is true. Even during a classroom, when for example there is recitation, and there is always recitation in law school. If your cases assigned are 20 cases, and then you only studied until the 19th case, and you got called on the 20th case, that's your bad luck, and has happened to me.
That's karma.
That's karma, and that's how
karma,
people
you know.
experience. You had bad karma.
I was always called on the 20th one, you know, and I probably only got up through 15, you know, which is...
Yes, exactly. And the preparation for a class is in itself a deed. You have to do it. It's a good deed, not
Right.
for yourself, but of course, ultimately for the grade. But you have to do it because you are tasked to do it. It's your assignment. So somebody approaches me, for example, oh, you're a lawyer. Oh, by the way, and then takes you to the side, starts asking me questions. I indulge them. Actually, my mom said, being a lawyer is like being a priest. People confide in you, and when they confide in you, they take you to a corner and they really confess all their sins or all other people's sins and ask you for your opinion. And that for me is time consuming. I mean, to listen to somebody's problems.
Sure.
But actually, I wondered whether I should learn how to manage it or turn it down. But so far, I haven't found a way. Maybe other lawyers
I
would be.
think it probably comes down to a case like in your case. If they have said, hey, well, can I come by your office and talk to you? You start the clock when they come in. If you're just meeting them casually and they say, I got this problem, what do you think? And that's where you make your decision at that time. So, this is really kind of a legal issue that would take me some time to do some research on. So I'd really have to take you on as a client to do this. And that would have to be your
Yes, it's
your
a judgment
feeling.
call. It's
And you know
basically
what
a
it's like.
discretion.
I mean, there was this one fella named Bob, who would use you forever and never pay you anything, right? I mean, and
Even though they have
we
capacity
all
to
sort
pay.
of got used by that fella, as I recall. And we won't say his last name because I don't remember it mostly. But that's one
It's
of
a
the
judgment
things.
call.
It's a judgment call, and
I
you're not going to get it right every time. But it goes back to that point of, yeah, well, maybe you can say when a guy is sitting down and talking to you, he's already taken up 30 or 40 or an hour of your time. You can say, I really have to do some thinking and some research on this. This is going to I'll have to take you on as a client to do that. And once you come into the office and we'll work up a little agreement and let's do that. And that's probably the best way to handle it without being nasty or anything else. Is, this is a little bit, I don't have everything right up here on this. I'm going to have to do some study.
But in
And
relation
that's
to super branding,
Right.
even among professionals, you have to make a name for yourself. Eventually, you get known by your name and your
Absolutely.
brand, and your name is your brand as an individual.
And as
So you
individual
have to deliver,
professionals,
yes.
we're always that way. Teachers are that way. Musicians are that way. Baseball players are that way. Or
The brand
basketball.
Super branding is positive branding.
It is.
Not
I agree with
negative.
you.
Not
Yes,
negative.
definitely.
For
Always.
example, the bad boys on the block, for example, this character called Ashong Salonga. He was supposedly, Arab came out in the movie as that, but that's what you call bad branding. He was a hoodlum, he was like a criminal, he lived in Tondo and he was threatening people. That's bad branding. but it's still branding
It is
because
branding.
name recall. There's consistency of being bad. You know, consistency is there.
Hitler, they're
They-
the ultimate in
Well, there you
bad-
go.
in
Hitler is
ugly
bad
branding, and
branding,
evil
branding,
branding.
yes.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it is not super branding because to brand, the word integrity cannot mean negative. You know, it should
I agree.
mean positive. And if it's negative, we shy away from that. Let me announce this. About 2 weeks ago, we endeavored and we staged what we call the Most Outstanding Mayors Awards. Okay, we branded some 7 to 9 mayors all over the Philippines. It was not limited to just the NCR, and we branded them as most outstanding. Interestingly enough, it comes with a publication, a book, because Super Brands, we do publications as well. And within that book, there were other features other than the most outstanding mayors and everything that they've done and their photographs and their achievements, successes. One of them was CSR.
As a matter of fact, that was sustainable. That was Dieter Bruckner.
That's Dieter
right?
Bruckner.
Yeah, Dieter Bruckner's
That's
thing. He's been on the
Dieter,
show. Yeah.
Dieter has a way of, he was the one who opened my eyes to it, to explain to me that this is not charity. People think that CSR is always charity, you know, go give, let's feed them, let's give them books, you know.
Yes.
Let's plant trees here and get a photo opportunity. Let's pay for a deep well and pay for its installation so the people have water. No.
Those are all good things.
Yes.
They're certainly good
No,
things,
yes,
but
but
they're not sustainable.
They're
CSR.
not sustainable.
Right, right.
But CSR needs to be sustainable because you're not supposed to look at it. And if you do look at it as an expense, you're already made that mistake. CSR is, which is why I included it in this book, that's why I'm mentioning it. In the Most Outstanding Mayors Awards, it was imperative to me, it was pertinent, that I make it part of the publication because public service is sustaining. These mayors who were given the award as most outstanding, it was imperative that they understand the sustaining concept and idea of CSR because they're public servants and they're the city administrators or municipal administrators. In this case, his write-up and his feature, it was a 4-page feature, it explains not necessarily just the bayanihan spirit, although one big photograph in that book was about the bayanihan. There was a number of men, 30 men carrying a house, moving it from one location to another. The bayanihan spirit is somewhat like CSR in the sense that the help that you give to one and continues, that one person or that one effort becomes actually your market in the future. It becomes your talent pool for the future. It becomes sustaining in the sense because if you do not care about your community and or your environment, believe me, it'll come back to bite you.
Well, yeah.
So it's not whether you want to do it. It is imperative that you do it.
Absolutely. Sustaining CSR, sustainable CSR, is an investment in the future. It's exactly what you're saying. You're creating a pool of people that you
Yes.
might be able to choose as future employees.
Yes.
You're creating a pool of people who will become your customers in the
As
future.
well.
Because something that you're doing over here may raise the level of those people that they can buy your product or they can participate in your services.
Correct.
And this is why we have to define the branding, and this is where I think you're absolutely right. To separate branding from super branding. Super branding is always positive. It's something going in the
Yes.
positive direction. Branding can be ugly, evil, lots of things.
Yes.
Can be lots of. I mean, hey, you
No.
go out. If you ever watch Texas Wrestling or Smashdown or whatever, you got the guys that are branded as the
Well, the perfect example of branding.
evil guys or whatever. Yeah.
The Philippine Senate. Need I say more? Need we say more?
Uh-oh, no. Whoa. We're going to have to save that for the show when we get together with Jerry Cornejo. I
All
think,
right,
you know,
all
that would
right,
be
all right.
Now, no, actually, no, it's really true. You know, and this is the point that I think we should make on this show. And it doesn't necessarily have to do with super brands. It has to do with super branding. It has
Yes.
to do...
Totally different.
Yeah, it has to do with
Super branding is always
corporations. They can have a brand, but they have to work very hard to keep it in the super area, meaning that it needs to be positive. How do you keep it positive? And we've talked about this before when you're going about who are you going to get to do your advertising? How are you going to advertise? Who are you going to hang on your? Who are you going to go on your campaigns and things like that? And that's something that maybe we got to look a little bit on the second half of the show on how some of the things that we want to look at when we're going out for a campaign. And this is Sarah.
In her case, for example, a legal profession, the ability to listen or to have to absorb problems or inquiries of others is super branding, because it's the act of CSR in her profession. She's super branding her profession, her brand, in that one single direction.
But I think you would have to agree with me that there are a lot of unsatisfied customers also with their own lawyers. Sometimes they feel they paid too much and did not get the results that they wanted. So I mean, the intent is there to super brand among professionals, but it doesn't always lead into an integrity, as you said.
I had a lawyer one time that dealt. He wasn't my lawyer, but I got to know him because somebody else was in trouble and he was lawyering for them. And I asked him because he had to deal with murderers and really some awful people, thieves and stuff. And I guess he had a great brand because he said, you know, some of these guys, I end up lawyering for them for 3 or 4 times in their lifetime when they go off to jail. But he says, I know that I've been successful when somebody I lose, you know, and I get them the best deal I can, you know, and he said, and then the next time they're in trouble, they always come back to me because, and I suppose that's a good brand. And my question when I first asked him was, how can you go through life having to deal with these kind of people? And he said, you know, you just look at it as, here's a problem, here's what I need to do with it. And he believed very strongly in the fact that everybody deserves a good defense. You know, he was a defense lawyer. But I thought, you know, I used to have this idea that the defense lawyers were always these kind of sleazy guys that,
crooks.
and I changed my mind after that. No, it's just a guy that, it's another problem. Everybody deserves to have a good lawyer. And he says, I guess I'm pretty good at it because when I lose, they still come back, you know, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing,
thought it's,
you know.
one for the money.
You know, well, I think that's when the people get into the really high stuff. And, you know, lawyers, it's really sad, but there are about 1,000 lawyer jokes, and most of them aren't very nice, you know. They're really not there. And the branding for, you know, overall lawyer branding. That's another thing that we could talk about in the super branding side of it, because we're coming down to write the wire here in the first half of the show. But yeah, maybe in the second half of the show, why don't we talk about how do we change a negative brand? And since we have Attorney Sarah on the show tonight, lawyers have a kind of a, I mean, even Shakespeare said, shall we kill all the lawyers, you know? So they never had a whole lot of really great positive branding, you know, as you went along.
That's true.
So all you folks out there, don't go anywhere, because we have a lawyer on here, so we're not knocking down lawyers just for fun. But maybe you'll find out how we can help the lawyer profession
Yes.
improve their brand. Don't go away.